talk about my little mishap with trying trying to decipher when there was that uh Mo Kalen and Winterfell, and I was just like, wait, season 5. So season 5 got to come after season 5. And I was like, damn, I already talked about it. I can't even give the little disclaimer thing. I'm pretty sure I didn't say that in season 4. Yeah, because I think I watched season 3 and 4, and then did the history and lore afterwards. And then yeah, I'm two episodes into season 6. Okay, yeah, bet.
Embarrassingly bold, they call me to my face. I know what they say behind my back.
Rip a real one, man.
Embarrassingly old. And it's true. I am old.
Wait, bruh. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to. Okay, yeah. We good. We good. Yeah, cause Daenerys. Cause what's his name? The only reason I'm able to remember like that order right there is because Grey Worm. I remember thinking, oh, he was injured and that's why he wasn't there, with Daenerys in a Coliseum or the fighting pits or whatever. Okay, so yeah, we good.
With hair as white as all the winters I've seen. The older a man grows, the less sleep he needs. These days, I barely sleep at all. When darkness falls over this strange city, I find myself visited by the faces of the kings I have served, the faces of those I swore to protect.
Damn.
The faces of those
that
I
fell.
failed.
Stuff.
All I ever wanted was to live a life of honor, defending a king worthy of service. During the War of the Ninepenny Kings, I sought out Malus the Monstrous, last of the Blackfire pretenders who had started this whole war. Malus believed that his Targaryen blood gave him a claim to the Iron Throne. I made sure his blood claimed nothing more than the dirt around his corpse. To show his gratitude, the king elevated me to his kingsguard. It was the proudest moment of my life. But that king died, and I wasn't with him. Not that I could have saved him if I had been, but still, I vowed to do better with his son, the young Prince Aerys. For 20 years, his reign was peaceful and prosperous. Aerys was well loved by his subjects and respected by his lords. But as years went on, Aerys' temper soured. He became obsessed with dragons and fire, and the swords of the King's Guard couldn't defend him from the enemies he saw lurking in every shadow. My king went mad. But there was hope. His son and heir. Prince Rhaegar was everything a kingdom could hope for in a ruler. He was strong but gentle, wise and cautious, and a good friend. No matter the wounds Aerys dug into the realm, we had faith that his son would sew it back together again when he ascended the throne. Then came Lord Went's tourney at Harrenhal, the largest ever in Westeros. I unhorsed every man against me until only Prince Rhaegar remained. We each set our feet in our saddles and lowered our lances and charged. And I fell. Muddy and bruised, I then watched Rhaegar present Lyanna Stark with the victor's crown of roses, though she was betrothed to Robert Baratheon. And Rhaegar himself was married to Elia Martell. We all know what happened after.
Yeah.
If I'd been a bit quicker with my lance, if I'd chosen a faster horse, perhaps I could have spared the kingdom from the destruction that came after. Or if I'd thought to warn Brandon Stark against his rashness. He came to King's Landing himself, demanding Rhaegar return his sister. Poor fool. If he'd only known the depth of Aerys' madness, he wouldn't have dared provoke him. Aerys ordered Brandon imprisoned, and I could do nothing but obey. When Brandon's father, Lord Rickard Stark, came to King's Landing to beg for his son, Aerys burned him alive, and I could do nothing but watch. I had sworn a vow to a mad king, and was honor-bound to obey him, even at the cost of my soul. Ravens soon arrived with dark news for the king. The Vale was in open revolt. Demanding Lyanna Stark's return, Robert Baratheon was smashing any army that dared face him. Eddard Stark, Brandon's younger brother, was marching the whole of the north down the neck and had taken Catelyn Tully, Brandon's betrothed.
Listen, I try not to say any jokes in the history and lore videos, bruh. But I just gotta say something about everyone's expression right now. You know what I'm saying? So Barristan just looking like, what the fuck am I getting myself into, bro? This some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? You look how I'd imagine you'd be looking. Look fucking cracked out your mind, my guy. And in Pycelle just look how he'd be looking, bruh. Be confused as shit. Not even be confused as shit, but be looking like confused as shit, like looking lost.
For his own, thus winning the support of the Riverlands. The king sent ravens to Casterly Rock to
keeping his head down.
Hand, Tywin Lannister for help. And no ravens returned. A plan was devised. Prince Rhaegar would personally lead the royal forces, now reinforced with 10,000 Dornishmen, north to face Robert. Of the King's Guard, Lewin Martell and I would ride with the prince. Before we left, the prince confided in me that when he returned from this battle, there would be a great many changes in court. Despite my vows to the king, I confess I was excited. On the march to face Robert's army, we were sure we'd win. We had superior numbers, and we had Prince Rhaegar. His presence lifted the spirits of our men, and he looked every inch the king he was destined to become. But at the Trident, the gods played a cruel joke. Robert proved the Baratheon words as his army smashed through our lines. Lewin Martell was killed. I fell in combat, badly wounded, and could do nothing but watch as Robert's warhammer ended Rhaegar's glorious reign before it began. And the kingdom that would never be washed away down the Trident with his life's blood. But Robert spared me, insisting his personal maester tend to my wounds, out of respect. But respect for what? A king's guard shouldn't survive one king, let alone two, and one who should have been. I swore an oath to House Targaryen.
What could have been, man.
And I failed them. All that's left of their fire is a single ember halfway across the world, surrounded by darkness. If the gods were good, I would still be young in the fullness of strength. But whatever the cost, I will not let this ember go out. This time, I will not fail.
Damn, and he went out protecting everything that she stood for, man. Even though it's a goddamn trap.
Before the Seven Kingdoms, before the Iron Throne, there was Dorne. 12,000 years ago, the first men crossed the land bridge from Essos to here. Of course, they were men, so they soon broke it. Then, while their cousins to the north built kingdoms, the Dornish squabbled over land, water, and wives. For centuries. Until Nymeria, a warrior princess in Essos. She led a fleet of 10,000 ships across the narrow sea to Dorne. Almost all of the petty lords made it clear that she wasn't welcome. All but one, Mors of House Martell. He saw in her a strength to match any man, including his rivals. After she accepted his marriage offer, she set fire to her ships. For 50 leagues, the coast was bright as day, and in the burning light, Princess Nymeria named Mors Martell the Prince of Dorne, in the style of her people. Dorne would be her home, or her grave. For many years, Nymeria and Mors waged war against all rivals. The Jordanes, Blackmonts, Corgyles, and even the mighty House Ironwood. They sent no fewer than 6 self-styled kings to the wall in golden chains. After Mors fell in battle, Nymeria took command of his armies and united Dorne. In 2 years, she ruled for 27 more, and though she married again, those husbands were little more than counselors and consorts. Dorne was Nymeria, and Nymeria was Dorne. She survived a dozen attempts on her life, put down 2 rebellions, and threw back 2 invasions. And when at last she died, her eldest child succeeded her. Her daughter, not her son. And Dorne followed her because Nymeria had proven that women were equal to men, if not better. Centuries later, Aegon Targaryen sought to unite Westeros as Nymeria had Dorne. The other 6 kingdoms fell quickly before his dragons and ambition. When his sister wife, Rhaenys, flew her dragon south and demanded our surrender as well, Princess Meria Martell warned, "I will not fight you, nor will I kneel to you. Dorne has no king. Tell your brother that." Rhaenys threatened that the next time the Targaryens would come with fire and blood. Meria replied, "You may burn us, my lady, but you will not bend us, break us, or make us bow. This is Dorne. You are not wanted here. Return at your peril." Rhaenys did, and she died. Her dragon died. All her soldiers died. Eventually, her brother, the Conqueror, conceded that what Nymeria had done, he could not undo. Generations later, another foolish Targaryen invaded Dorne. He died as well. Eventually, we did join the 7 kingdoms, but when we wanted, and on our terms. If dragons could not conquer us, why should we fear lions? Unbowed, unbent, unbroken. The words of House Martell, the words of Dorne. Men may forget, but women always remember. When we were divided, Nymeria united us. When we were invaded, Meria defended us. Now Dorne has been humiliated, its prince murdered. Who will rise to avenge us?
The father reached his hand into the heavens and
How did
down
the prince what's it called, get like, is he paralyzed? Is that something that all like been happened, or is that something that's happened? How to explain it? Is that something that's happened, you know, during birth type shit? Like born that way? Or how did that happen?
7 stars, and one by one he set them on the brow.
I thought I wasn't trying to say anything. I thought they was about to say it during I think it was the Robert Rebellion slide. I was like, oh, you know, you said you got the Martells there. I was like, okay, you probably might say it there. I was like, you might say it there. Maybe it was during battle, but it didn't happen.
The hill to make a glowing crown. The maid brought him forth a girl as supple as willow, with eyes like deep pools. And Hugo declared that he would have her for his bride. So the mother made her fertile, and the crone foretold that she would bear the king 44 mighty sons. The warrior gave strength to their arms, whilst the smith wrought for each a suit of iron plates. But sadly, the gods no longer walk the earth among us, and you can see what a mess we've made of their creation since. Yet we have hope. The gods didn't abandon us in silence, but gave us their holy words to guide us, collected in the oldest and holiest text of the faith of the 7, the 7-pointed star. Divided into 7 books for the 7 aspects of God, in it we learn of the Father's justice, the Mother's mercy, the Maiden's innocence, the Crone's wisdom, the Warrior's strength, the Smith's labor, and the Stranger's peace. It is a long book. Many never read it in its entirety.
I wonder if I could actually...
When the Andals first sailed for Westeros, filled with
find
divine fire, every warrior carved a 7-pointed star into his body. for even that was easier than carving its namesake into his mind. Though one could perhaps argue that it wasn't the warriors, but the septons and scepters, armed with the holy text of the seven-pointed star, who truly conquered Westeros. The first men had no letters, but the runes they would scratch onto rocks. No gods, but the faces they would carve into trees. But then came our holy men and women among them, bearing the very words of the gods under their arms. Trees and rocks were no match for the seven-pointed star, and most of Westeros soon turned to the faith and to its guardians, their new Andal overlords. Whilst the Andals soon fractured into warring kingdoms, the faith remained whole and indivisible, bound together by the seven-pointed star. When those kingdoms fell to Aegon and his dragons thousands of years later, the faith remained subject only to the seven above and the seven-pointed star below. Or so it was supposed to be. Too often, our High Septons have lost their way, clouded by worldly wealth and power. No matter. We still have the seven-pointed star. Men's will and virtue may fail, but the words never do. As men bow to their lords, and lords to their kings, so kings and queens must bow before the seven who are one. The knees of the powerful work the same as the knees of the weak, and were given to all for the same purpose, to bend before the gods, or break in the bending.
Ooh, damn. Listen, I ain't gonna say nothing more on that type of, saying religions is something you can't speak on.
Men know the seven as
if you know better.
In the sects, but in the old days, the gods themselves walked among men. They crowned Hugo of the Hill, the first king of the Andal people, and promised him that his descendants would rule great kingdoms in a foreign continent. When the time came, the Andals carved the seven-pointed star upon their bodies and set sail for the strange land across the narrow sea, Westeros. Whilst Andal warriors battled the first men for kingdoms, Andal Septons battled for souls, and were received just as courteously. We don't know how many bold and pious men lost their lives, but adversity bred strength. Our purest and most righteous believers took up the sword to defend and preserve the faith from its enemies. So was born the Order of the Faith Militant. When Aegon the Conqueror landed in Westeros, the High Septon locked himself in a sept for 7 days and 7 nights. Finally, the crone lifted her golden lamp and showed him the path ahead. The High Septon himself would anoint and crown Aegon as Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and the Faith Militant rallied behind Aegon in governing his newly united land. Yet Aegon and his sisters never wholly accepted the faith. The High Septon had conceded Aegon's marriages to his sisters as a relic of his Valyrian heritage, which would soon fade. But when Aegon's heir wed his daughter to his son, the faith could brook such abomination no longer. The High Septon led the denunciation of the Targaryens, and all over Westeros the Faith Militant took up their swords against the dynasty and its supporters. The Faith Militant set upon and punished the Septon who had performed the ceremony. A few of the Faith Militant's more militant members even scaled the walls of the castle and would have slain the king and his family had a knight of the kingsguard not intervened. Frightened, the king fled to Dragonstone, where he soon died of cramps. And so ascended the king's younger brother, Maegor the Cruel. His first act was to challenge the Faith Militant to kill him if they believed his rule to be ungodly. To the Order's eternal credit, they accepted. Ser Daemon Morrigan proposed a trial by 7. Ser Daemon and 6 of the Faith Militant against the king and his 6 champions. It was a contest in which the kingdom itself was at stake, and the accounts and tales are many. But at the end of it, Maegor alone lived, proving that the throne was rightfully his. he mounted the Black Dragon, Valerian, and burnt down the Sept in King's Landing, while the Faith Militant were inside at morning prayers. The screams of the burning and dying men were said to echo throughout the city. Though Maegor had won the trial by 7, he demanded the complete destruction of the Faith Militant and the Faith itself, if necessary. He made war upon the Order wherever he found it. Yet the Faith Militant would not surrender, raising armies of their own and turning Maegor's own lords against him. The Father's justice may not always be swift, but it is certain. One morning, Maegor was found dead on the Iron Throne. No one knows how. Maegor's cruelty died with him. His successor saw the wisdom of a united crown and faith, and his hand reached an accord with the High Septon. As long as the Iron Throne defended the faith would put aside its own swords and its condemnation of the Targaryens. Perhaps the High Septon felt he had no course but compromise. Outlawed and hunted for years, the Faith Militant was but a shadow of its former self. Without its own guardians, the Faith would have to rely on corrupt, worldly kings and their corrupt, worldly courts. For thousands of years, the Faith Militant had stood watch over the Faith. And then, its sun set. Now, after years of war and destruction, of abomination and blasphemy, none can argue that we have been walking through darkness. Perhaps the time has come when the sun must rise again.
It sound like they was on their last legs, man. Let's finish what y'all started. Oh, this that little book the princess was reading.
The Dance of Dragons, a true telling by Grand Maester Munkin, being a history of the war of Targaryen succession between the Princess Rhaenyra and Aegon, second of his name, that nearly destroyed the
next
realm.
level Ouroboros shit.
The Dance of the Dragons. A stupid name for a Targaryen civil war where my ancestors danced away my birthright. Before the war, House Targaryen counted
I haven't heard your
18
voice in a
dragons.
minute, my boy.
By the end, we had 2, and nearly as few Targaryens. We would never be as powerful or as feared again. The dance began, as many dances do, with an old man and a young girl. The queen had failed to produce a son for her king, so he anointed his daughter, the Princess Rhaenyra, as his heir. But years later, the king remarried, and his new wife, Queen Alicent of House Hightower, gave him a son. Feeble and foolish, the old king refused to change the succession. He didn't even see how his court had split into 2 rival camps of blacks and greens, after the dresses that the princess and the queen had worn to some tourney. One night, a servant found the old king had died in his sleep, and ran to inform Queen Alicent. Protocol dictated that the bells would be rung and a raven sent to Dragonstone to summon the heir, Princess Rhaenyra, for her coronation. But Alicent had other plans. Once she saw her dead husband's body, she sealed the room and had the servant thrown into the black cells to ensure his silence.
Yeah, but why are you looking at me?
The Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Criston Cole, summoned the small council to inform them of the king's death. Sir Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King and father to Queen Alicent, demanded that the succession be settled immediately. The decrepit old men of the small council were confused. The succession was settled in their minds. The old king had forced the lords of Westeros to swear fealty to Princess Rhaenyra as his heir. But Sir Criston Cole rightly pointed out that a son comes before a daughter. The council argued until dawn, when the Master of Coin finally stood up and declared he would have no part of treason. Sir Criston Cole, wisely, opened his throat with a dagger, ending the debate. None were more surprised to hear of Prince Aegon's succession than Prince Aegon himself. At first, the fool rejected the crown, but his mother pointed out that his sister Rhaenyra would return such loyalty by taking his head. As the old king's true-born son, he'd always be a threat. Aegon relented. He was crowned in the Dragon Pit, and his wife and sister Helena became queen. His brother Aemond flew off to win over the few great lords whose support Aegon didn't already have. The banner of the Gold Dragon flew over King's Landing and the Red Keep as Aegon, second of his name, ascended the Iron Throne. he would not sit it long. When ravens carried the news of Aegon's coronation to Dragonstone, Princess Rhaenyra summoned her own Black Council. With her was her uncle and husband, Daemon Targaryen, considered by many to be the most dangerous man in Westeros. Few lords supported her, but the greatest of these was Corlys Velaryon, who controlled the largest fleet in the realm, and his Targaryen wife, Rhaenys, the old king's sister. Then there were her 5 sons, although none grown to manhood. A pitiful assembly, really. Combined, they couldn't match the power of House Hightower alone. But Rhaenyra had dragons. She, Daemon, and Rhaenys rode huge and formidable beasts, and 3 of her 5 sons were riders as well. Dragonstone also housed 6 more dragons without riders. Against this, King Aegon had only 4 dragons of his own. Dragons can burn a city, but only armies can take and hold it. If she was to prevail, Rhaenyra desperately needed the support of the few great houses not already sworn to Aegon. Her eldest son, Jaehaerys, flew to the Vale in the north. Her middle son, Lucerys, flew to the Stormlands. Rhaenyra hoped that the war would begin and, if the gods were good, end with diplomacy. As always, they weren't.